Good evening to all, and welcome to the Shatter After's official companion podcast to HBO's The Last of Us, where we chat and seek the art beyond the clickers. I'm Brandon, and I'm, of course, joined by the great Mike Thomas
Ayo.
and the superb, because it's in his Twitter name, Brett. What's up, man?
What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Guys, we're going to be covering The Last of Us, HBO's The Last of Us specifically, every single Tuesday, because if any show deserves the attention of gamers, movie lovers, and art lovers alike, is The Last of Us. It's one of the greatest stories ever told, and it only came out 10 years ago, but ever since it came out, it's been impacting people in so many ways. And the fact that it is coming out in a brand new format and medium, it calls for examination, conversation, and just overall enjoyment of the story once more, because Neil Druckmann really came up with a very timeless story when he came out with the Last of Us universe. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. Every Tuesday, we're going to be covering every single episode. As you guys know, the show hasn't come out yet. Comes out this upcoming Sunday. So today, we're just going to talk about some interesting information in regards to this amazing adaptation that is getting crazy reviews. Did you guys see that supposedly it premiered with a 100% tomato meter score? Which is
wow.
like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. Yeah, they're giving it like 100% Rotten Tomatoes, which, again, Rotten Tomatoes is not necessarily the only game in town in terms of reviews, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal just to start off there. Even if it drops a bit and it maintains that percentage, that says a lot. Because I think the first people that put reviews there are critics, are not necessarily your regular audience moviegoers. And the embargo just went up earlier today at 12 a.m., right? So the reviews are coming out now. People are saying what they think. Mike has an awesome review on the channel. If you guys want to listen to a nice non-spoiler review of the series, Mike has an awesome review there. But we're going to talk a little bit about our experiences with the game. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the interviews and interesting conversations about things that were changed for the adaptation to work, and also overall things that we think are important when it comes to translating this powerful story. If you love what we do here at the Chatter After, make sure you click the like button, click on the bell for notifications, and subscribe so you don't miss any coverage on any of the movies that we cover. You don't miss the Chatter After Daily, where Mike and friends cover news every single day, most days. And you don't miss any episodes of Beyond the Clickers, the official Last of Us podcast. So let's start with Brett. Brett, you I don't know how many times you played this game. I know that you were awesome and joined us when we covered the game specifically in preparation for Last of Us Part 2 a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Talk to us. Give us a little bit of insight about you and The Last of Us.
Yeah. So I did not, when the game first came out, I did not have a PlayStation. I was not a PlayStation guy. I think I had a 360 and all Nintendo stuff, obviously, because it's me. I'm on Nintendo all the time. So,
It says it on your Twitter bio, Nintendo.
Right. Just Nintendo fanboy. It's there. I have to wear it on my sleeve. So I didn't actually play it when it came out. I remember like seeing like all the buzz about it and being like, oh, that's actually seems pretty cool. I want to play that, but I was like, I ain't buying a PS3. So what I ended up doing was, I guess it was like, I think PS4 came out in like 2015. Maybe 2014, 2015. I was like a year or two after the PlayStation 4 came out. I bought one and I got a bundle that came with The Last of Us Remastered. Nice. And I don't know, something else. So I had never touched any Naughty Dog games before. So I went in and I played The Last of Us. And so like I played it like, 2 years. So like after the hype had kind of died down and like it wasn't like in the zeitgeist anymore. And yeah, I went in completely spoiler free. I had no idea what happened, which was great. I never got spoiled on the story, and I just went in. And oh boy, so I should say I've only played the game once, and that's also I've only played The Last of Us Part 2 once. They're a little
that sounds like I was on purpose.
Yeah, my mind was melted when I beat The Last of Us Part 1. Like that ending, I could not stop thinking about it for like literally weeks after. I would just sit and have like an existential crisis about the way that that game ended. And I hadn't really had a game, I think, impact me in that way before. I don't think ever. So I was like really, really like taken by that title, and like I never revisited because I'm like, I don't know if like the spark, the magic's gonna be gone, because I'm like, well, now I know what happens, I know what it's building to. So I'm like, I don't know, and listen, it's a stressful journey, as we'll get into, I'm sure. It's a very, very stressful game.
Yes.
And a beautiful game at the same time at points too. The other thing I will say too, just is that gameplay wise, I didn't think the game itself was that exciting. Gameplay wise, it wasn't really doing anything that I hadn't done before, which is like not necessarily to knock it, because I play games that are the same as other games all the time. Like most third person action games now are like the same fucking game. Like most first person shooters, like the same controls, it's the same game. So I don't want to like knock it and be negative because of that, but that wasn't the reason I played the game. It wasn't because like, oh, this is fun to play. Like it was just like I was really gripped by the characters and the story and the acting and the writing and like the whole just like, you know, media of it, I think was really what kind of grabbed me. So I never went back and played it again. And you know, I kind of just want to keep that pure memory of my first playthrough and that, like, I think intact. This I feel like kind of sacred about the game. Yeah, it's weird. Like I feel very sacred about it. And so I don't know. That's like my experience.
Wow, that's awesome. It's interesting because I've played it multiple times, but I do also understand your apprehension to going back into it, because
it's like sadomasochism for you to go back and just keep playing that game.
But
it's torture.
Yeah. Yes. But also, I do. It's one of those, when you have something that impacts you in a certain way, you kind of want to preserve that. So it also gives it an impression, right? It's a positive impression, you know. So, Mike, same question. Wow.
Hey, Christian.
Nice. Christian in the chat, for those that are going to listen to us in the podcast channel, I have some idea what Law says. Welcome to the club, brother.
Yep.
Welcome.
Pain.
It is. There's pain. Pure pain.
It is.
Mike, The Last of Us, what brought you to the table?
Yeah, so I guess I'm the reverse of Brett. I've had every single PlayStation my entire life, you know, from PS1 all the way up to PS5. But this was not a game for me initially. So I got this, I think I probably got it on sale. I can't remember. This is a long time ago now. But I got this, I got the remaster. And I hate horror. I hate zombies. I hate everything that this game is about, essentially. But for some reason, I popped it in and I couldn't stop playing. And I was as tense as ever going through this gauntlet, right? Of all emotions, right? Joy, fear, hope, anger, anxiety. It's all just building up as this game progresses. And yeah, like I'm kind of with Brett. This is not a game I revisit often. I think this is probably right now my third playthrough of The Last of Us. The first initial one, and then for the review we did a few years ago, and then for the review we're doing now. Essentially, work is the only reason I've returned to The Last of Us. Right. That's not to say it's bad. It, like Brett was saying, it's like the holy grail of video games, right? This is a story that I've experienced, and you kind of fear that going through it again, what if it doesn't hit the same? What if you start seeing flaws and it changes that perception, that nostalgia that you had for it initially? So that said, replaying it, playing part one again, it's still phenomenal. It's still a perfect story. It's not necessarily a perfect video game, right? I feel like Uncharted 4 plays and feels better than The Last of Us did. Part one helps improve that a little bit as far as gameplay wise, but that's why I think The Last of Us is perfect for an HBO series, right? It's a very narrative, story driven game, and so it's just taking everything we loved about the original and turning it up to 11, essentially, by saying, hey, what if we did this on HBO with a budget bigger than Game of Thrones, and see where that goes.
Awesome. So I got my first chance to play The Last of Us when I got my PS3 bundle, when I was gifted that. So I had a PS3, and I wanted to play other stuff, because not that I'm not a horror person. I'm a little bitch. So I don't I can't play Resident Evil. I get scared. It's one of those things that just, I'm not that kind of gamer because I get scared. I'm not kidding. But when I started playing it the first time, I don't remember how I just one day I said, let me just try it and put it in. I was not expecting that first sequence. I don't expect this to be a game that was meant to be about loss, story, heartbreak. I wasn't expecting to be a story there because for those that know anything about The Last of Us, which is very interesting to think about, is that it is a game that exists within the zombie genre because there is an infection, there is an outbreak, there are monsters, and it is humans that become monsters because of the contagion. So I've always loved the zombie genre. I don't like playing zombie games, but I wasn't expecting that the story was going to be our introduction into that zombie world. That's the most important piece of the puzzle. So I think I started it, I played a little bit of it, and I got stuck after you try to leave with Ellie, and I left it. And then one day I just picked it up and played it throughout, and I just loved it. And I loved it so much that when I saw the option of buying the remastered version for like $20, I picked it up. And my friend Jeremy is one of my best friends, almost pretty much my brother. He hadn't played it, but he didn't see himself play. He didn't see interested, even though funny enough, he's a super hardcore Resident Evil fan. But he doesn't want to play The Last of Us. So what we would do is I would do a share play, and while I was here in the States, I would share play to Puerto Rico, and that's how I played Remastered again, because It was such a powerful story that not only did I want to play it again, I wanted to share with people like the story of this game. That's how big the story was for me because these characters are great. And every time I shared it with people, the same reaction that I had of those moments hitting, it would hit them, and we would just talk about it, and the conversation was there. So this, you have something meaningful and authentic in particular when you're getting a reaction that's pretty synonymous with everybody watching it. It's not something like simple and only about what you feel, or that your interpretation of the things are very different. It's interesting because part 2 is all about everybody interpreting everything that happens differently. That's really what part 2 is, but not part 1, which is going to be very interesting when we get to that point, if we ever get to that point, hopefully. But yeah, so I played it again. I did the same thing with part 2. I actually took time off work to get part 2, and I finished it in a week. And then I did the same thing with my friend. I played part 2 while he watched the share play. And I don't know, I love this story. I love this world because I think the best zombie stories or the best horror stories are the ones where the element of horror is the canvas. What really matters, what you're really painting with, is the story and the narrative of the characters. Those are the best horror stories, unless it's just cheap horror for you. Unless that's the objective, right? And that's what we get here in The Last of Us, and that's something why I think it keeps bringing people in, right? It keeps selling. I mean, a lot of people. I remember we had a conversation with a friend about the remake, and it's a full price, it's a rebuild. Yeah, but at the same time, it's like I want to experience it again, and the idea that I'm able to play it again in the same fidelity, graphical wise, and expression wise, and artistic wise as part 2, I can play it as a cohesive story now, and it looks the same, and the characters just looks like they're growing into each other, and the tweaks to the remake are actually pretty substantial that you can actually play in the story. But yeah, I think that was also the thing that motivated me to play. I'm actually playing it again now as I'm getting ready to watch the show. Like right now, I'm playing it right now. No, I'm kidding. But it's because I want not only to see the parallels, but also I find it amazing how the story beats are so strong. The character work is so strong. And now with the improved CGI or motion capture and how they bettered it for the remake, it's above and beyond so great. Now, I love what you guys mentioned about the gameplay, because not only is it very similar to, for example, Uncharted and stuff like that, it's not something like groundbreaking, right? I love the fact, though, that it's good enough that it doesn't hinder the game. Because you have games that if the gameplay is not up to par to a degree, it's just going to hurt the experience and you're just going to drop it. right?
Right.
I think that the gameplay is intense enough. It's well thought out enough that it actually works into the story well enough that you enjoy the playthrough no matter what. But again, like we all said, the story is what keeps us going, which is why when we found out that HBO was making a live action adaptation of the game, not only did we all get excited, but we were geared up and we figured, you know what? Let's see what's going to happen. We're going to give it a chance. Now, we found a couple of articles that came through. We have a couple from Collider, Hollywood Reporter. A lot of people have been interviewing Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. They've been in a press tour forever. I think the press tour ended yesterday with the official premiere of the pilot of The Last of Us in Hollywood. And one of the things that I found interesting, the first thing I want to mention about this particular article is that I had no idea. I knew that they've been wanting to make something Last of Us like action forever because of how big the sales were of The Last of Us when it came out. I mean, for being a game that pretty much ended the PS3's lifespan, it became one of the best-selling games of the console, which is kind of ridiculous. But did you guys know that they were working on a live-action movie adaptation with Sam Raimi?
I just saw this news. I didn't know it at the time or before I read this.
What do you guys think about that? Imagine what that would have looked like.
I can't. I legitimately can't.
Yeah, I really don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because of course you have two types of people that when they see Sam Raimi, they either say Spider-Man 2002, right? Or they say Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't think that's because Evil Dead is straight up horror, but like campy horror, right? Army of Darkness is something completely different. But I found it interesting that not only have they been trying to make this work, but also Neil has been involved since the beginning on every single phase of the adaptation process. So that says a lot. Right on Neil's commitment to the material that he's created. Now, I did find it interesting because this is another one of those stories where supposedly he tells on the article that he went to this master class or this class where George Romero was there, and he talks about how and everybody come up with a story, with a zombie story, and see if it works. And the fact that George Romero, the one that created Night of the Living Dead and all that stuff, which are like cult classics, he said, "Oh, that's not going to work. That's no good." Like imagine that person to tell you that and suddenly the story that you write just literally changes the world.
Right.
Now, when you first heard that, because I don't think the information about the Sam Raimi thing was ever official. I think, or at least official enough that it was announced and mentioned, hey, we always knew there was something happening. When you guys heard that it was going to be HBO, and when you guys heard that it was going to be Craig Mazin from Chernobyl that was working on this, what was your reaction?
Yeah, so I did watch Chernobyl when it came out on HBO, and I'm like, that's an inspired choice. But I think that's the right hands, right? It's a very similar in tone, even though the stories are vastly different. Especially for me, what got me invested in the show was hearing that Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann were going to be heavily involved with the series.
Yeah,
because you have something like Uncharted, right? And same studio, Naughty Dog. We don't hear hardly any involvement from them on that movie, and
correct.
It's not terrible, but it's definitely missing the spirit of what the Uncharted games were.
It really does, yeah. It's
peaked by numbers,
yeah.
So knowing that the creators, knowing that Druckmann was going to be a driving force behind this series is really what gave me confidence. But yeah, knowing that Craig was involved, that gave me a sigh of relief because I was familiar with his work. I was familiar with his game, right? The Shaq meme. It's like, yeah, I understand that we're in decent hands. Druckmann was what put me over the top, though.
Right.
Before we move on, thanks, Christian. He says he loves the name.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.
Well, when I was making dinner today and I was thinking about recording this later, I was like, why didn't we just call it The Cast of Us? And then I said, I'll see myself out.
Dang it. Isaac is
myself.
smiling
To
somewhere.
myself. Yeah.
I mean, Isaac at some point is gonna scream out that he's proud, and
At least someone will appreciate it.
Oh, jeez.
so when you heard about Craig Mazin, I mean, do you know Craig Mazin beyond Chernobyl? Brett, have you ever?
No, so here's a fun fact. I did not watch Chernobyl, and I don't know anything about Craig Mazin other than that there was a lot of buzz about Chernobyl when that show came out, and that he was getting a lot of praise. So I did know that, and when they announced he was involved, I said, "Well, that sounds good." I haven't seen anything, but that seemed, he did a good thing, so he's capable of good things. So I was happy. But of course, like Mike said,
I love the logic.
Yeah, he's capable of good things. And like Mike said, then when they said Neil Druckmann, I mean, that was the only way I was gonna feel comfortable or maybe even accept that this was getting made into a movie or show or whatever they were gonna end up doing with it, because there was a movies at one point, there were shows, there's everything. Yeah. And when they said it was had to have Neil Druckmann involved. Like that's for most things for me. I mean, and I think in most cases it works out better that way if you have the creative involved with the transition, the adaptation, you know what I mean? So it's I don't know. It's like it seems like a no-brainer at this point, but everyone gets it so fucking wrong. Like we were just saying too, like with Uncharted, it's like no one wanted to get behind that at all. They just said, do whatever you want. Like
exactly, like bring someone
run-of-the-mill action movie, and it wasn't bad. Like, but it could have been like way better. But I don't know.
It could have been a Nathan Drake adventure, and it didn't feel that way.
Well, also they should have did it like several years ago, and probably with what's his face,
Nathan
Fillion. Yeah. You saw his little his one that he made.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
So good.
That's all I need, honestly. That's the Uncharted movie in my book.
Yeah, like that is the Uncharted movie.
I have a question for you guys though.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Chernobyl, right? And Brett, you were saying how, well, I think we're in good hands because people like Chernobyl, so hopefully we're good to go. Before that came out, the last thing he was dealing with was the Hangover franchise. If the headline was the writer of the Hangover is in charge of The Last of Us, how would you have felt?
No, then I would have maybe been like,
I mean, well,
listen, you told me people said Todd Phillips is making a Joker movie, and I was like,
true,
that seems really weird. I just know him from friggin' what's
the Hangover.
Yeah, isn't he Hangover too? And then he's didn't he do the other movie, the other one with Will Ferrell when he falls with the dart? And Luke Wilson. What is it? You're my boy, Blue. That movie. I can't remember the name right now. Old School. Wasn't that Todd Phillips?
You're my boy, Blue.
Yeah, I'm like, he's that guy. And then he made
movie's just movie, so, something else. Hey,
but whatever.
I love that you brought that up, Mike, because it's interesting, because it's funny how perception is key, but also how judgmental we can be with certain people. Like it's like unless someone convinces us that they have range, we can never admit or accept that they have range. Exactly. It's so weird. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's interesting enough because history has taught us that the artists with most range are those that know how to do good comedy. Because they're so intertwined with how working with human emotions that they tend to be very good with expanding upon that in different areas. I mean, Todd Phillips getting to the Joker makes sense because he knows how to tap into emotions. Because to make someone laugh is not a simple thing. And to actually make it logical so it makes sense. Like, it's funny how laughter has to be logical or completely idiotic. There's certain extremities that need to be explored for it to work, right? But also, the idea that Craig Mazin is a writer first, I think is also very interesting. So because he cares about story. And at the end of the day, whatever you want to think about the Hangover movies, especially the first two, the story is what makes it ridiculous, amazing, and fun. You know, apart from all the
formula,
gags.
They were fun movies. They were.
And they worked very well. And so when Craig Mazin was announced, and like the biggest thing to me that stood out was like, wait, HBO is doing it?
Right. Yeah.
That was like, okay, that means there's money that's being put on the table to actually work on this. And when I read the interview with Craig Mazin was the fact that because he got Emmy nominations and I think he won some of the Emmys, or some Emmys were won by Chernobyl.
Yeah, there were definitely some noms and stuff, yeah.
I watched Chernobyl, and it's frightening and phenomenal. And it's literally a human drama. And it's literally about what happened in Chernobyl. And it's very humanistic and very insightful to the human condition and reaction of how that affected everybody in so many ways, and how government gets in the way of people being safe. It's so crazy, so powerful. And then after I watched Chernobyl, I was so enticed and ready. Okay, Craig Mason is the guy. So it's so funny when I read the interview that he literally says, so Neil Druckmann asked me, how do we make this done? Oh, easy. We just go to HBO, and I beg them that this is the next thing I want to do. Like, this is what we need to do.
Simple. We just beg HBO.
Exactly. But because he's delivered, because he's capable of good things, he was able to beg successfully to make this his next project, which tells us about how much passion it is. So this is someone that's passionate about the story. And I love also the line where he goes, how do you make the best live action video game adaptation? By cheating. You just pick the game with the best story ever told.
Yeah. Especially in this case where it is a human story, right?
Right.
One thing that I did say in the review is that The Last of Us it's an easy win when you really think about it, because all you need to do is get two good actors,
right,
put them in a room, and make it happen. You don't have to like a live action Mario movie would be impossible, and we've seen them try that, and it proved to be impossible. But The Last of Us is a human story, like you were saying, and so the very nature of it's easier for us to gravitate to, because we can make an easier connection to those characters, to that setting, even though you sprinkle some fantastical elements like zombies in the mix.
Yeah, and what a great combination of guys, because you got Craig Mason and Neil Druckmann, which are two writers, who are also two directors. So the fact that they found a way to get together and work on a vision together, and from the little things that we've seen on the trailers, even the first glimpse that we ever got, because I don't know if you remember, the first glimpse that we ever got of the show was part of a very simple sizzle reel of a bunch of HBO stuff that was coming. Yeah. And we have that scene of Joel saying, you do not know what loss is. Yeah. Like he anybody, he said the thing. And it's interesting how anybody could say, oh, that was just playing your heartstrings, like, you know what works. You know what I mean? It could have been like just tossed on. But the direction, the frame, the gravitas, the presentation, it was just the right amount of just right. That you were like, that everybody went like, oh.
Well, it's like you see HBO and you go, all right, so as soon as I saw HBO, I said, okay, cool, so it won't be bad. Like, I immediately felt confident, because, like, listen, I'm sure there's one out there. There are ones that have been as successful, but, like, I watch, like, a lot of HBO and a lot of HBO series, and, like, there hasn't really been, like, a bad one. Like, there are ones that are not as good as others, but there's never been one where I watch where I was like, oh, man, that is hot trash. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're almost always, so as soon as it's HBO, I was just like, oh, great. So at the very least, it's going to, like, have money behind it, and they're actually going to try. So I'm like, at this like point, like, it's at least a 3.5 out of 5 stars, like, just being HBO. It can't be worse than that. And then you said, okay, Druckmann's doing it and Mason. And I'm like, all right, so that's at least 4.5 stars. And then you said Pedro Pascal. And I actually don't know Bella Ramsey for anything too much, but I know Pedro Pascal. And I was just like, hey, this is a 4.55 out of 5 stars. You know, like, it's just there. It's there.
I love how off of name alone that took it to a 4-star.
And well, because my confidence level just immediately, like, rose up. I'm just like, I know they're gonna hit the right beats here. Like, they're not gonna mess up the story because it's the guy who created the story. Like, I don't think he's really gonna jack it up unless, like, all of a sudden, like, studio execs come in and go, change it, you know. But it seems like they said, go, here's the money, go do it. You know, the game sold well. This has got to be halfway decent.
I'm glad, and it's interesting you say that, because that's kind of to a degree, that's kind of how it works with HBO. Yeah. Like, HBO runs. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you probably know more about this than I do, Brett, because I don't know, you act.
Maybe I don't know, probably not.
But HBO literally works like an actual movie studio. It doesn't really work like a TV or syndicated channel. You know, they have the freedom to get creatives that are able to pick the project and do it. You know what I mean? Or they are hired to do a specific project, but they're given the freedom to do a certain vision. It's not like, hey, it needs to be just like this. And one of the things that I love about it is because when you see the documentaries, and Christian Eulenberg on the chat says HBO runs the world.
It's pretty much
Makes sense. When you see the way Neil Druckmann commands scenes, he knows how to construct moments. Like all those great scenes were directed by him. So we have money, we have the studio, and we have the freedom to do what they want. And what we've seen is that their intention is to value the story, is to present the story in the best way possible. And we've seen it in every single trailer, in every single presentation. Like every time I've seen a trailer, I'm literally watching like 3 times in a row. Like, oh my God. It's like, it's just so good, everything that we've seen. And also when we heard the Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, I'm thinking Game of Thrones because they're both Game of Thrones alumni. So these are not only known quantities now to the world, they're known quantities to HBO. So like, you know, so HBO is like putting everything behind them. They're picking the right people. And it's so funny. I saw a tweet a little bit ago when I was walking to my car. Someone that was reviewing the show says, and for those that are worried about Bella, don't worry. She delivers. And I was like, okay, I'm ready.
Game of Thrones actors get it done.
Get it,
Christian,
yes.
You are spitting facts right now. I'm gonna
yes, you're doing the thing. You're doing the thing. So now, as we move on, right? Like we're excited about the show. Everybody knows this. We love the game. We're excited about the show. We're excited about the team behind it. Now we got to talk about how do we make this work, right? How do we make this work on TV? Now we're going to talk about the gameplay aspect and the changes that the change of medium bring to the situation. But how do you make the story work? And I found this article in Collider that was very interesting that literally talked about how they're handling the infection. And one of the interesting things, which delivered one of the greatest moments in the game, or most interesting moments in the game, that I am kind of sad, I'm crying inside, that we're not going to get it, which is the whole thing with the fact that Ellie can breathe the spores and how everybody reacts to that. Like, it's a big turning point story-wise in the first game, and it's part of a big climactic moment in the second game as well.
Yeah.
So the fact that that's being removed for the sake of story and realism to a degree, I found it very interesting. And so apparently spores are gone. They're not a thing.
Yeah.
Biting is a thing still. So inspection, so that kind of infection, like any other zombie movie, that still happens.
Right.
But now apparently there's tendrils, which are taking the place of spores, and also the idea of interconnectivity of a fungal community of interconnectivity between all the fungus, which is very interesting.
It's like
and also, and it's also very like Super Mario Brothers '93 too. Because that's the way Toad was. No. It was like a hype.
Trust the fungus.
Don't tempt fate, Brandon.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I don't know if Mario's gonna watch this, but
yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So now the cool thing. Now I find that super interesting. Now the whole thing with the tendrils, I don't know how it's gonna work, but there was a picture somewhere which I should have prepped it, but I didn't. And so apparently, in the same way that the clickers and the infected die and get stuck in walls, and the fungus just keeps growing around them. Apparently they're gonna grow tendrils, and if a tendril touches you, you become infected. How do you guys feel about that?
Just from a touch?
I don't know, but that's kind of how it looks. And it's like literally like imagine that from here you have like little pointy things that are coming out. You know how fungus kind of like when it grows like on a tree, it's like steps of mushrooms. So it's like something like that literally can sting you as you're walking through it. So if you're not careful and it touches any part of your body, you're infected.
Yeah. You know, like I don't want to be like conspiracy theorist guy or whatever. I mean, and honestly, so first of all, number one, I should say like I'm fine with this change. I think it's cool. I'm sure they'll work it into the story well. Like, I'm sure they'll do a good job with it.
Yeah.
But like, part of me was thinking when I read this article, I was like, I have a feeling HBO was just like, nah, man, that's too much money to the budget. We got to be doing CGI spores and like all this stuff. And they were like, and like, oh, we just cast Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. We don't want to cover their face with face masks. We want to show their face all the time. It kind of that I don't know why. Like I read this article and immediately was like, that was like cost. I wonder if that was like budget cutting measures.
So are you telling me that so spores is where HBO draws the line? Not on Pedro Pascal, not on Craig Mason. Spores.
I wonder if it was like just like maybe they had to do like effects for the spores, and it was just like maybe if we don't do it, it'll like save us some money or something. I don't know why I read
$1 million here or there, maybe somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
I read that. That's what I thought. I don't know. It was weird.
So it's funny because I saw an interview where Craig was talking about it, and one of the things that he said was that that if it was spores and they were in the air, everybody would be infected. Like, there's no way.
I remember you're saying that, and I'm like, I remember having this thought, I believe, when I played both of the games at some point. Like how come they're only in these certain areas that there are spores, and then it's a problem?
You see, in 2013, it didn't matter, but here in 2023 we all have experience with an airborne pandemic, and so they're probably like, let's just not focus on that aspect.
That's a good point too. I wonder if they were kind of like, let's maybe just not do that, we'll back off a little bit.
Yep. We don't want to give people PTSD.
Yeah, but totally. It's still interesting. I think it's a cool concept. I'm more interested because like one of the parts too in that same article, I just want to find. I just had it. Yes. Okay. So this is Neil. Okay. Thinking about the game had spores in the air and people had to wear gas and blah, blah, blah. But then just thinking about how there's a passage that happens from one infected to another, and like fungus does, it could become a network that is interconnected. It became very scary to think that they're all working against us in this unified way, which was a concept that I really liked that got developed in the show. So like that part, so like I was kind of like, again, I had my whole thing. I was like, okay, this sounds like cost-cutting measures and they're making an excuse so people don't get pissed off, blah, blah, blah. So I thought that, but and I was like, but the tendril idea is cool. And then when he said that, I was like, wow, I wonder if they are going to lean into, Mike, like you said, like a hive mind aspect and do something where like maybe the zombies like coordinate their attacks more or something. Or like how they're able to like read from one another. Like that could be a really cool thing. And just in general, I was going to say it earlier, but like maybe this will kind of go in the same topic. This game and in obviously as an effect, the show has really cool zombies. They're not just like regular zombies. Like that was one of the things that I always liked about the series is that I think the fungus angle is actually like really cool, and it gave way to like some really unique, like creepy, gross, yucky like designs.
And there's different types. There's not just one. Like there's different variations depending
the
on
levels of mutation, how they look, how it affects. Like I always thought that was really, really neat. So yeah, like the spores, I guess I can deal with. I'm fine with it because I think just that aspect is so cool, in the show and the game.
I like the idea of the hive mind, and spoilers for part clicks. Spoilers for was part 2 of the game. It actually kind of makes sense, the idea of a hive mind, because that is one concept that makes the Rat King make a lot more sense. Which those that know, that's a big, which we're not going to show a picture because if you haven't played the game, I'm not going to give you ideas. But it's a concept. Those that know, it's a concept that makes a lot more sense with that hive mind mentality as the next step in someone's life that's been infected by so long. And also, I like how the story uses the passage of time to make everything happening with the infected believable. And what I mean by that is because, for those that know the story starts 20 years before the main game occurs, right? So there's a 20-year gap. And because of that 20-year gap, clickers make sense. Bloaters make sense. Stalkers make sense. Because you do have infected that have been infected for an immense periods of time, which wouldn't make sense. And that's why you have that nice balance of newly infected and people that have been infected in different stages. But yeah, like the hive mind thing is pretty cool. I still want to see how the tendrils work. But like you said, Brent, I'm glad that you brought it up. I mean, at the end of the day, the zombies look cool. And just like Mike showed on the picture earlier, I mean, we knew, I think that was the biggest surprise of that first official trailer, right? It wasn't because we had seen Joel already. We had seen Ellie already. We've seen shots of Sam, and Henry. We've seen shots of Tess or of her Tess. We've seen shots of Tommy. But we saw like movement of like infected, but we just saw movement. But we all wanted to see how are they going to make the clickers work?
Yeah.
We needed to know how this was going to work. And the fact that this shot is the last shot of that first trailer.
Yeah.
I think all of us went, oh.
More like holy crap for me.
Yes. It's like they're doing the thing. And that looks amazing.
It does. It's like, but like that is such like I said, it's a really cool design.
Yeah.
And I think that does help, make it stand out. Oh, by the way, while you were talking, I was thinking too about how the tendrils are going to work. And I was like, I think it's probably going to be a thing where like maybe like, let's say there's a clicker on the other side of the room, but like they accidentally touch a tendril across the room. Like it can communicate, so like maybe you're going to be watching where you're touching, where you're stepping, because it could trigger like and give signals that people are around to the zombies. So like that might be a way they're doing it. It's like the floor is lava, like.
No, and it's interesting that you say that because one of the things that they mentioned on with the whole hive mind and tendrils is that when they impact something or someone, it sounds like a whip. It makes a noise. So I think so it makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah,
so there's logic there, Brett.
Yeah, they can use it as like an extra sense or something. I don't know. It might be. It's cooler the more you think about it and talk about it.
Yeah. So now I want to see it. Damn it, Brett! I gotta wait till Sunday.
I know, but like you bring a good point up though. Like that was a cool moment with this whole spore thing because that was the way of like letting other people know the little secret that she can't turn or whatever. And like it's like I don't know. Maybe they can do that some other way or
right.
I'm sure they could just do a thing like, oh, what's the scar? And like they figure out what the scar is or something.
Or maybe she gets hit by another tendril and nothing happens. That could be the other way.
Like that. Yeah.
Which you can have the same kind of magic, right?
Same beat.
Yeah.
Same effect. Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
Now, it's so we got a shot of the clicker, right? And then on one of the second to last trailer, we got a shot of the bloater. Now the crazy thing about the fact that we saw a bloater was the fact that, holy crap, they're almost all practical effects. Like it's not just CG. I mean, there's a lot of CG there, like, with the fire and whatever. And we know there's CG enhancements to that suit. But the fact that they made it a point to understand what's going to make this work, we need to use practical effects. Funny enough, they kind of took note of Sam Raimi because Sam Raimi is all practical effects. But the fact that we see this guy, it's like, bruh.
Yeah.
Bruh. Like when I saw that, I went like this. Oh! Like because I knew that a bloater was going to happen. I wasn't expecting to see it on the trailer, but it's like one of those shots in the trailer. You're showing this for fans. You want fans to freak out.
Yeah, 100%. That's the fan service right there.
Yeah. It looks so good too. Like, just look at this design. It's terrifying.
It's just so wet.
Yes.
Everything's so wet. It's moist. It's so gross. I love it.
Welcome to Brett's channel, the moist of us.
The moist.
Oh gosh.
That's horrible.
That's
my
so
only
bad.
That's my OnlyFans.
That's so bad. And that's where the channel turned off.
And everyone unsubscribe.
But yeah, like the idea that they're going this far to make this work, and I love how and not only it reminds you of the game, but it also goes like, damn, this is where the money's going. It's not the spores, Brett. Like this is where
That's
where the
why they
money's.
said, listen, we can make these zombies real wet if we cut the spores. And they were like, all right, up the wetness. They called the production team and they were like, listen, I need you to take that wet slider from 60 to 87.
It's funny. Proof. It's funny. What's the that's what they call like the team that cleans people, like the wet team. Is that what they call it? Like, yeah. This is going off the rails. Let's keep going. But no, yes, wet. Now every time I see the bloater, I'm gonna think, oh, is it wet enough?
You have no idea what moist is.
Yeah. you haven't even seen moistness until you've seen the bloater.
Oh my gosh.
I've been on both sides of the moist.
Okay, Scanlon.
Okay. So we're trying to I love the bloater design. I love the idea of practical effects, which is why we saw the different pictures, but then we saw a set picture came out a little bit ago of Neil Druckmann working with one of the actors, and it's a clicker actor, and this looks amazing. Yeah. Like we all know that it is going to be enhanced with CG in some way, shape, or form. And I love that that's what they're doing. Because here you see the care, because you gotta. It's not just the fact that Neil Druckmann was the writer. Like, he know how much his team worked hard to make these designs, to make him frightening, to make him. So if someone was fighting for these designs to work, not only was it Craig, but it was also Neil. Because Neil is not only thinking about his story, he's thinking about everything his team put in. And he's valuing his team's work by allowing these designs to look this way in real life. I love how not only do we see this, but the set. Do you guys recognize where this picture was taken?
I can't say that I do because I don't replay it.
This is the museum right before they get to the Capitol building. So when I saw it, I was like,
and that makes sense. The display cases, okay.
Yeah, and they're building the sets to create these pieces, these scenes from the show, and I'm just excited. Like, this gets me excited because that's the type of detail that I like. You know what I mean? Like, and also like the
set design is just beautiful. Like, it's everything you want it to be, right? Because the fact that you were able to, from this behind the scenes photo, to know what this location was, that's attention to detail, man.
That's pretty good.
Apart from the fact that I just played it like a week ago. So, but yeah, it's like they're paying attention to all these little details. And like if anybody, like if they needed to find out how a clicker's supposed to react, they got the guy in the room that knows. Do you imagine Neil Druckmann's now doing, like, he's like twerking like the clicker, like showing.
He's like, raise your right shoulder about 6 inches. You should be a little higher up. Yeah. Now shuffle. Now shuffle.
Shuffle. Now stand still and twerk. But yeah, it's I love this. It's the same thing that I talk about, that when we cover anime all the time, like one of the things that we love of some of the best anime adaptations back in the Amateur Otaku is that some of the best anime adaptation, the mangaka, the creator, is working hand in hand with the studio. And it shows. And it shows because they honor the artistry with the panels, with the coloring and all that stuff. And it shows a lot. And when they deviate from the original vision, it shows too. But this show just looks so great. And we keep talking about it, and I keep getting more and more pumped.
The aesthetics are like, they're hitting all the right notes. So as long as, the writing's there, which like I'm sure it will be because the writing was good in the game, and from what they've been saying too, it hones pretty tight without too many crazy variances from the story that we know. So so I mean, by all means, I mean, like I said, the ingredients are there. It's just like the final execution,
Yeah, and it's and also when you have such a great story, right? And you're trying to stretch it for the medium. I mean, as long as you expand something, right? It's not the same as adding a bunch of fluff as it is to expand on something that's already there, right?
Right.
And the best adaptations expand from whatever's there, and it feels that that's what they're doing. Like for example, this right here, I don't recall a plane crash in The Last of Us,
Right?
but this is a shot that it makes perfect sense. Them walking by and seeing an airplane crash. You know what I mean? Because most of the times that we see them at the beginning of scenes, like it's not a level by level game, but it is divided in levels, so to speak. Like there's breaks and edits in the game where, like, especially when it changes seasons, right?
I wonder if they'll do that.
Yeah, like if they actually put.
Is it going to be like every 2? Because what is it? They said it's 10 episodes, I think. So we have like, assuming about 10 hours to tell this story. Where the OG game had what, anywhere from like 14 to 20, depending maybe.
Yeah.
How slow you kind of move through it. So it's like they really seem like they can tackle a lot of the story. But I'm curious if like it's going to be like an even break, like it's like every 2.5 episodes, 2 episodes, like would be a new season or something like that. Maybe they linger longer in one versus another.
Yeah, because and it makes sense because when you think about it, like the longest season-wise experience that you have is actually winter. Which is the whole scene where Joel's sick and you're playing as Ellie. I think that's the longest of the seasons, right?
I think so, yeah.
So it would make perfect sense to do it that way. Now, I one of the creative decisions that they're making, and it's funny, Brett, because I don't know if you remember this, but back when we did our Last of Us Part 1 game coverage, we talked about the show, and you mentioned something that I've always liked. And I've seen it a lot recently in anime adaptations, and it's the idea of, you mentioned Sherlock Holmes, because the great thing about Sherlock in BBC is that it's an hour and a half long episode. It's literally a movie per episode. You only get like 3 episodes a season, but it's an hour. But the best thing about that kind of length, right, is the idea that you don't have to hold yourself to a TV, to a silver screen constraint. Like if you're doing a syndicated TV show, it needs to be 38 minutes because you have like 6 to 7 minutes within that hour that has to be ads. So you cannot go beyond those minutes, right? But if you have, you can do whatever lengths you want. You can literally shape the episodes however you want to tell the story as far as you want. So then really the episode count really doesn't matter. Because you're managing the episodes in any way you want, so you can tell as much story as you want. Which leads me to this: the first episode is going to be an hour and 25 minutes.
Okay, yeah. So I was gonna say, like, I guess I know they probably have some that are longer and shorter. So
I think the episode 2 is like 70 minutes or something like that. It's a little shorter. And I just saw a tweet somewhere that someone mentioned that episode 3 is going to be 80 minutes. Like. Right there, you're talking about almost 3.5. Yeah, it's like 3.5 hours of show and just 3 episodes.
I love it.
So
that got me more excited.
yeah, like they're picking. I feel that they're picking the encounters, like they call it in the game. They're picking the important story encounters and making the episode based on that encounter, and then just working their way to the story there. Sure. Now, are they adding new characters? It looks like they are. To fill in little gaps of conversation and interaction and stuff like that. But I like that. The fact that they made that decision to make sure that they finish the episode where the story of that episode ends, not because they're being forced onto a wall. Like they're allowing creativity to feel that. And
let it come to a natural end, natural flow, and how it. Oh. Yeah, I think that's all great. It's exciting that they're not like constraining themselves like that. It just makes me even more excited. It's like, show's gonna be so good.
Yes, because again, they're putting the story. It's like they're putting their money where their mouth is. You know, like they said they're gonna care about the story, and They're doing it.
You know what it is too is like, and you guys might, I'm sure, like maybe in the same boat. I have so many friends and family that will, don't play games or will never touch this game or buy it. But like now I get to share this story with them after like having probably gushed to them. Like my wife, I've like told her about this game like a million times. I've probably like verbally explained and told her the whole story and why it was amazing. But like now she's actually gonna get to see it. And hopefully be as moved and touched by it as I was. But like that's really kind of like what I'm most excited about. Like that's one of the things I love, sharing art and games and movies and stuff with people, and I love like seeing their reactions to it. And like, for something like this, because it is such a beloved video game, which is like really more my lane, to like get to show it to other people and be like, listen, like, cool, now you enjoyed the show. Like, now imagine this was an interactive video game where you were the guy like making the decisions and doing all the stuff, and like imagine that and like how cool that is, and like how that exactly. And it's like buy The Last of Us Part 1 remake on PS5.
That's going to be like, HBO does not have ads. That Sony's going to have some sort of bumper and be like, buy now, PlayStation Store.
Yes.
Oh yeah, available now.
Yes.
I'm surprised like I haven't seen that actually yet with like the ads actually.
Trust me, it's gonna happen. I think
it's gonna happen. It's gonna
happen. It has to happen. It has to happen. Now, I love that you brought the change. You prepared the perfect segue, which I'm ruining by stumbling in my words. The idea of now you watch the show. Now you know the story. Now imagine if you were playing the guy, if you were inhabiting the guy, and you're the one making those decisions and making those changes and killing those people or killing those monsters that used to be people. Like I find it very interesting that every single adaptation that we've seen, I think the closest one that I say is interesting and faithful to a game to a degree was the Tomb Raider one. Whether it was good or not, it's a different story. But the Which Tomb Raider one, good question. The one with Alicia Vikander.
The new one. Okay.
Yeah, the new one. Because they literally try to do some type of form of that game. Like, whether it worked for them or not is a different story. But like, I think that was closer to trying to be faithful. But again, at the same time, they missed the point, because as opposed to just focusing on the story and making the character interesting, they try to recreate moments of the game, like scene by scene, frame by frame, because they didn't understand the fact that player interaction is what drives those moments. Like one of the most powerful moments in The Last of Us is when you enter, I don't know what city it is, but as soon as you leave Bill's town and you start the Hunter's Arc and you're driving in, and then you got these people trying to kill you, like when the guy pretends to be like a beggar and you have to like run him over because Joel knows that they're trying to like just kill them or whatever. Right. As soon as you crash the car and the cinematic is going and you're getting out of the car and trying to help Ellie, someone grabs you as Joel, breaks the glass on an actual fridge and tries to stab you with the glass. And out of nowhere, this big square button goes like, press me, press me, press me, press me. It's like, you don't get that in a movie. Can you build tension moments? Yes. But the type of tension that you feel as a character, as a player that's actively engaging with what's happening in the screen, is something that's very particular with video games. So a lot would say the worst versions of anime adaptations are those that miss the point that there is a distance between interactivity and just being a passive, being a passive entertainment venture, to say at the least. But like, for example, so how do you guys think about how can they make this work? How would you make it work? I mean, we're going to see the show in a couple of days, but how do you make it work where so many people have gotten wrong? Why do you think that most people get it wrong when it comes to video game adaptations? I forgot I was in the wrong show. when it comes to video game adaptations, what do you think people get wrong with movies?
I mean, a lot of the time, I think it's just like they don't like bring the heart or like the spirit of the project to like whatever like adaptation or me and Mario have this argument all the time.
Adaptation
or adaptation, and we always argue about it. And I'll
like
never get it right.
Abrams.
Yeah, Judge Abrams. So we'll never I'll never get it right. But like I just think they always come over with just like, I know it's so like general, like to say like, oh, it just doesn't have heart, doesn't have spirit, but like that's what it is. There's like the essence, there's that je ne sais quoi, the soul of the project, and that just like doesn't seem to make it over. Like they just construct this like empty shell of a project, and so I don't always know what it is, because I don't know if it's like, some people will say like, well, it needs more fan service. If it had that, then it would be good. And I'm like, but that's just like little like dopamine pops. Like, is that really any substance? Like, what really? It's hard to kind of like pin down what that is exactly. But sometimes it's just like, maybe in a general way, it's just like nailing the tone, and they just don't quite get the tone. I don't know.
What do you think, Mike? I mean, there's no right answer, but
there's not. I just don't want to. If I say something, I don't want to,
it's okay.
Get in trouble.
Well, which is why I went to other games.
Yeah. So what most people get wrong, I feel like Brett is right on the money there, though. Like, it's missing what makes that story or makes that character, right? Going back to Uncharted, love Tom Holland. He's not Nathan Drake. I don't feel Nathan Drake from that character. I feel Peter Parker. And, it's a fun action movie, but
he's buffer.
Yeah.
But he's
more confident Peter Parker. Like, that's kind of what it was.
They gave him the hair, they gave him the outfit, they gave him the necklace and the little ring, and it's like, it looks like a cosplay on him because he just doesn't feel like Nathan Drake. They tried.
He doesn't have the charisma. Like, he doesn't give that idea of this is someone that I want to hang out with and go on an adventure with.
Yeah, not in the same way from Nathan, right? Because I think Tom has tons of charisma, but not in the same way we would expect from Nathan. Especially since Nathan's always felt a little older, Tom feels a little younger. Yeah. This isn't going to be my Uncharted rant. I'm sorry, but I feel like that's the point, right? Of missing the point of the story or the point of the character and trying to echo that, and that's why something like I said in my Geek Vibes review, that's why the Mario movie feels weird. The upcoming one from Illumination, it looks perfect. Chris Pratt isn't Mario, and that disconnect is always going to be there because he just doesn't feel like Mario, and so. With this show, it seems like they've got everything right, but like the thing that concerns me with adaptations going forward is that disconnect, right? Because I've been Joel for over a decade. How is it going to be with Pedro Pascal being Joel? Because you are, instead of you like having that fear and that terror with those clickers, with those bloaters, you're now just watching it happen, and those are the moments where it's kind of like, okay, how I don't know how you would even approach that, how you would kind of rectify that, because from that point it's just kind of like a run-of-the-mill horror story, right, where we're just watching the action happen instead of experiencing it the same way. So I honestly don't know how you kind of make that up. Even with the Uncharted movie, again, you have that big set piece, right, where Nate is falling out of the plane and all that cargo is like falling out after him. That is just Uncharted. That's purely Uncharted. Yeah. But it feels weird because I'm not Nate trying to climb back up or trying to grab a parachute or trying to fight the guy. You're just watching. Or
actually, because it's not Tom Cruise trying to do the stunts in real life. It's all CG stuff flying out of the plane. Exactly. It's not real Tom Cruise.
So I don't know how you make up that type of disconnect, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my main concern is that, when as gamers, like when we play a game, and especially a game like this, you do grow more attached to the character you're playing as than if you are watching a movie. Listen, not to say that you can't watch a show and movies and grow attached to characters. We've all done it. I do it all the time. Like there's so many good characters I do, but it's different when you're the one, like you said, when you're the one mashing that button to keep the glass from going into your face. When you're the one that has to like scavenge those last couple of bullets so you could pop those two enemies that are about to like give you a game over. Like when you're in the trenches, when you're the one, and all of a sudden like you ran into a room and didn't check right first, and there's a bloater there and he comes after you and you're like,
oh no, and bloaters are one-hit kills. So if he grabs you, you're done. Like
you're done. So like there's all of that that I don't know how, or it just translates differently when you're watching it, when you're passive versus a participant in the action. And and I'm gonna be very vague now because I don't want to spoil it for people, so I'm gonna try to be vague. But one of the reasons why the game melted my mind at the end, that last sequence, obviously the last sequence leads to the end, the game does something that a game has never done to me before. And again, I just had all these hours with these characters, not just the cutscenes, all the little banter while you're walking around, while you're climbing, while you're learning that Ellie can't swim, while you're doing all that. So I have all this build-up. I went through all these seasons, and there's this moment at the end where the game, I'm just be very vague, the game kind of makes you go, hey, did you ever think that maybe you're not the good guy? And you're like, ooh, I can't process this. Like
this never happens in Mario Brothers.
There is
but there's emotions.
Yeah, that moment hits, and you go, well, I was killing the bad guys. Like I'm the protagonist, so I'm automatically the hero.
Yes,
I'm the good guy.
Yes,
when I saw those guys in the street, I had to kill them. It was them or me. When I get them, and then they put you in this position at the end to do something that's like pretty messed up. And like I have a heart, and even though I know they're not real people. I'm in the game, but like I'm a human being, and I was like, oh, this is like a messed up thing. Like I don't really want to do this, and like at that point, your agency is completely taken away, and you have to do the thing. And then
you can't finish the game, which is like counterintuitive because you have to finish the game.
I want to know. Again, not spoiling it. Did anybody else freeze when that moment happened? Because I sat there for like 10 minutes like, do I need to do this? Is there any other way out of this?
I was walking around the room like, is there like a thing I could pick up or a button or like a prompt where I can like subdue them or whatever? Again, I don't want to be big. But, like that moment. And then there's the extra kicker, which is just in the ending when, the moment between our two characters, which feels like this other strange anomaly. I don't know like how to put it. Again, I'm trying to be very vague. A paradox where you're like, oh, like it's just me. I was like, what did I do? Who am I? Like, what did I do this whole game? Like, I had an existential crisis. Like, and that's something that I don't know. Like, listen, we know the moments. I'm sure some of the listeners that have played the game, they know the moments I'm talking about. Like, watching it, I definitely think it will have an impact, like seeing that, but it just, I don't know how it's going to hit different. And I wonder if it'll be as profound for people who have never played the game. This is their only exposure to it versus me. And I wonder if it will live up to that experience that I had with the game for me. Yeah. I kind of feel like maybe I should keep my expectations down just because I don't know. I don't know. But like that's my biggest question is like, do those moments hit the same way? Will they have the same impact? Is there a way for them to tweak them in a way that it does do that? Because like on paper, on face, I don't know if it can.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of the medium,
And maybe that's something that we have to accept too. Like the fact that the medium is incapable of certain things.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to what you guys have been saying is like, it's all about capturing the essence, the heart, or the spirit of the scene. Or like, how do we create the same emotional resonance with viewers that we were able to create with gamers? Because it's the census thing, right? Like you're not you don't experience things spiritually or eternally or mentally the same way when you hear them, when you see them, when you taste them, when you feel them. Like, it's all different ways of, and that's actually what they're doing, right? Like, something that we felt, heard, and did, now we just have to look and feel. So it really comes down to getting the right actors, getting the right understanding. And that's actually one of the things that makes me very excited about all this, because they're caring about the story. They understand that the story is they have, like you said, they have all the right ingredients to make this work. But when you guys were talking about other adaptations and how they kind of missed the point, I thought about the Resident Evil movies.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be honest, they're sort of a guilty pleasure of mine.
Yeah, no, I get that part of it,
Yeah.
but they're not like good.
They're not Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what a lot of people think when they see Resident Evil, and it's funny because Neil Druckmann is a Resident Evil fan, is that the point of Resident Evil is the variety of monsters and mutations, but also the mystery. The idea of government and all that stuff, and corporations and all that stuff. And that's what actually makes games interesting. It's not just the fact that you're fighting with these monsters and surviving and saving bullets. It's the idea of why this happened. It happened because someone allowed it to happen because they were selfish and they said, screw the world, we want to be rich, we want to be empowered, blah, blah, blah. Which makes it a more interesting thing, because a zombie thing for just being a zombie thing really doesn't work. Unless you're just trying to gross people out, right? And one of the things that I find interesting, which I like with the material that I've seen so far, is that every time I see Pedro Pascal as Joel, and it makes me think about one thing: they got the essence of Joel right. And when you think about it, I was thinking about this when we were getting ready to record, is that what makes Joel's character so interesting is that the loss that he has suffered, though part of it is because of the outbreak, was not caused by the outbreak. Because Sarah didn't die because she was infected. Sarah died because someone murdered her.
Yeah. It's like he loses his faith, I think, in people at that point.
Exactly. Which it's another side of, again, quick spoilers, but everybody that's played the game knows about it. And they've announced it more than once in all the previews. But that's one particular grain of essence of Joel that if you get wrong, you kind of lose the point of that character, and you kind of lose the connection that he has with Ellie, because anybody can lose anyone to an infection, to a disease, but when someone's taken away, that's where that drama is,
especially when they almost get out, right? Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
They avoided and especially when you're in those first moments, and Sarah says we could have helped those people that they leave at the side of the road. It's like all of that regret kind of swells up, because he's now second guessing every single choice he's made up to that point as well. Yeah, and it just highlights being selfish didn't really pay off in that moment, right? Yeah. And so, it's a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to handle. Like, understanding that, like, even some of the quieter moments, like Brett was mentioning, those moments when you're just traversing from point A to point B and you're having those conversations with Ellie, like, we don't have time for that necessarily in our 45 minute episodes, right? Whatever they're going to be. So it's like, how do you get the audience to bond with these two in the same way that adventure made us connect to those characters, which is always a fascinating beat, right? Because a comic book is easy to adapt because we're just flipping pages. But once you have that experience of becoming Link in a Zelda adaptation, right? What does Link look like when you do a Legend of Zelda movie or series? Because everybody plays differently.
Does he talk?
No. Does he talk? Does he not talk? I honestly feel like that's not even a discussion worth having, because of course he's going to talk. But anyway,
but he sounds like someone in particular in your mind because he's never talked in the games.
Yeah, you voiced him all these years, and like you play him a certain way, right? Like you know, my Joel's sneaky. My Joel just comes in guns blazing. You know what I mean? It's like, and if he doesn't do the thing that you did in the show, you're gonna be like, I don't feel connected to this Joel.
It's like,
that's not
bro, the Molotov cocktail was right there.
Yeah,
just throw the damn thing.
Throw the brick, make sound, draw him away.
And that's the thing. We all play very differently. So what is the base of Joel? What does Joel look like? And I guess that comes down to what Neil Druckmann says. Like, probably what he says goes in this instance. But when I would play, I was always super stealthy. I didn't want to get any fights. I was going to be like as passive as possible in this game and not have to waste a single bullet. But if you go on YouTube, on Twitch, and you see the highlights, you have people setting up a million different traps, and they've got
it's like murder sprees.
Yes, so many
See,
different.
I'm the one that has to kill everything.
See,
because
exactly.
I want to make sure that nothing just sneaks up behind me, so I have to make sure that everything's dead.
but that's my point, right? We play Joel completely differently.
Yeah.
So what does Joel look like? And those are the questions that you always end up having. That's why video game adaptations are so bizarre, because it's a drastically different medium from anything else, because it is so interactive with the viewer, with the player, where books aren't the same way. So it's going to be fascinating.
So it's interesting you mentioned, because I actually think that it's actually a lot more similar to books, actually, because what's the biggest problem with book adaptations? That everybody imagines things their own way. Right. Because every time I read Harry, he's like this. Every time I read like this, he's like this, right? And it's interesting how any adaptation faces that challenge, right? Like, you have to accept, whether you like it or not, what you're watching, it's someone's take on the material. It's someone's take on the character, someone's take on the outbreak, on what's going on. And I think what makes it so interesting about everything we've seen so far is that the actual creator is presenting his take on the thing. And I think, like anything, that's what's making it so good. I don't know, guys. This is going to be amazing. I am so excited.
Yeah, Sunday can't come quick enough.
Yes, it cannot. So before we wrap up, I have one question to close out the show. And you mentioned, Mike, the idea that there's a lot of in-between scene banter that we're probably not going to have, that we're probably not going to see, or that we may just not have time for, because we're telling a story. We got to keep things going, right?
Yeah.
What is the one Joel Ellie thing that you want to show its head in the adaptation?
No comment.
I mean, you don't have to say that it's there. What is something that you would like to see?
No comment.
Wow.
I'm representing my good friend Isaac Wolf with that statement. It is an otaku reference.
Fair. So, Brett, what is one thing that you can think of that Ellie Joel dynamic that you kind of want to see?
Of the dynamic? Or just
something
moment from the game.
That, or something in the game. Yeah. There. That's not like a major cinematic moment. That's going to happen regardless, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know if this one is gonna. I mean, actually, I feel like it probably will, because the first thing I was gonna say is giraffe.
Giraffe. Fair enough. It's kind of a cop out. It's kind of a cop out, but
it's a cop out. I feel like
it's a great moment, though.
It's a great moment, and it better be there. That one needs to make the jump.
Like the one thing where all the money went on the CG giraffe, and all of them.
I wonder if they'll do. I remember. I guess it was after. I guess it was after winter in the spring section when like their relationship has started to warm up. No pun intended. There's no pun there, but I mean, you know what I mean. Spring, winter. There's a season joke there.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Boo this man, chat. Boo.
Boo me off. But there was like a moment I remember right when he was like talking to Ellie about like he's like, oh, I'm gonna teach you guitar when we get back.
Oh yeah.
They started having like this like really like sweet like relationship starting to develop. Like I just hope that stuff, and like I liked all the stuff too, like about like towards the end with like the swimming and like
yeah,
like so I kind of hope like some of that stuff, because I thought those were like just endearing moments between the two characters,
right?
So there's those things that I do hope.
So in other words, you wanna see him look for a what do you call a pallet? You want him
I better see him looking for pallets and moving pallets all day. There's gonna be at least one in every episode.
Yeah, like I want to see him having to boost Ellie and Tess up so they can grab the ladder so he can climb up later.
Yes. That's what we need to see.
For bricks and bullets. Those are the things where it's like You can do it once. You don't have to do it every episode because it's repetitive and annoying in the game as is.
Yeah.
But you need it to happen once. Just
Yeah,
like,
gamify it. Just gamify like a couple of moments. Yeah. Just make it like.
There's a way of making it work. So see, I got two things. I'm
checking
things.
every single drawer in every room they go in.
Yeah. That's what they should do. Like
it's like
that's
Joel.
more realistic. Open
it's like Ellie, we've been here for 5 hours. There's one more drawer, damn it.
Yeah.
My dad likes loot.
Yeah. That was one of the best moments in that game.
Yeah. So I got two. I want to see Ellie trying to learn how to whistle.
Yes.
I want to see that, and I want to see her finding a joke book.
Okay. Yes.
Like they're walking around and she starts reading off jokes and whatever. Like that's what I want to see. I want to see that. Because that is like premiere Ellie. Like the idea of her just finding random stuff and just talking to Joel about it, because of course there's no one else to talk about it. So she just started a conversation, and Joel is this stern person and like ignoring everything but just listening to these jokes. I just find it hilarious. Especially because how different the characters are.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I want to see. It's like, what are you doing? Are you okay? I'm trying to learn how to whistle. Like, what's the problem? What's the problem? Let me learn how to whistle.
She's a child who's just trying to pass the time, and it's one of her more endearing qualities.
Yes. So, guys, episode 0. I think everybody knows what we're about, knows the expectations that we have for this crazy and amazing show. I think it's time we wrap up for this week's episode of Beyond the Clickers. I hope you guys enjoyed everything we talked about today. It's going to go on our podcast channel the next day. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to it here, make sure you come back to our YouTube channel. Click the like button, subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. So you can come back and listen to it. And also, you can find The Shatter After on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts are found. It's at Podbean for some reason. And you can find the podcast there and listen to Beyond the Clickers there and all the other Shatter After episodes. Now, before we head out, Mike Thomas, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me here at the Chatter After most days, daily. In fact, for the Chatter After daily, we've got the Golden Globes, and there's some things we got to talk about in the next episode. So make sure you subscribe for that. And Novice Cinephile, I've got a couple Avatar videos coming up in the pipeline for that channel as well. And Novice Cinephile on all social media platforms, including TikTok. Check out the TikTok.
Brett Kahn.
Yes, you can find me on the Fanboy Podcast, which comes out every week on Fridays with my cohort Mario Robles. Yeah, I'm at Super Breckon on Twitter. That's mostly what I use. I'm on Instagram too, but it's at BT Miro. But I don't really do much on Instagram, so just go on Twitter at Super Breckon, and then you can also look up at the Fanboy Show, and that is the Twitter for the Fanboy Podcast. So follow us, and then you get all of that. And then we're on all the podcast services, and you can subscribe. And we're also on the YouTubes as well. The YouTube, it's under Superman on Film on that channel, because the Fanboy Podcast is for supermanonfilm.com. So yeah, I haven't had to pitch any of this stuff before, so I'm like remembering it all now. So yeah, those are the places you can find us. Yeah, like, subscribe, hit the bells, all that good stuff. We do video games and movies and TV and all that good stuff.
Sweet. And you can find me at the Scarlet Fan 52 on Twitter, and you can find me, Mike, and a bunch of other friends, Isaac, Jamie, talking anime at the Amateur Otaku. We're on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe to our buttons if you love anime. We're covering Vinland Saga, My Hero Academia, Nier Automata, the animated series. We are doing a bunch of stuff at the Amateur Otaku podcast. Make sure you don't miss out by subscribing to the channel, and if you want to listen to us on the go, we're also available on the podcast feed. So guys, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Clickers. We'll see you next time. Stay awesome, be awesome, and like Savage Starlight would say, endure and survive. Peace.